welcome to Celebrities, the Gist HQ, the hottest spot for all the buzz, drama, and untold stories of your favorite stars. I'm Arthur, and trust me, you don't want to miss a second. Let's dive right into the gist.
You know, with Pope Francis passing recently, April 21st, 2025, much of the focus has rightly been on his spiritual work, his advocacy.
For the marginalized, yeah.
Exactly. But there's this other really significant part of his legacy, maybe less talked about, his push to reform the Vatican's finances.
That's absolutely right. And the sources you shared, they really they paint a picture of just how complex that whole financial world is inside the Vatican.
Yeah.
So I think our goal here in this deep dive is to really get into the main challenges he faced, and the reforms he tried to put in place.
Okay.
We're looking at a piece from Religion News Service, April 24th, an Economic Research Council analysis from the same day, and also a Yahoo Life article that mentions these issues. So kind of a few angles.
Good, a rounded view. And what strikes me from these sources is this wasn't just tweaking things, was it? It sounds like he had a real strategy, like a two-pronged approach.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Two main tracks.
Okay, let's unpack that. What were they?
Well, first, there was the technical side, very practical.
Right.
Restructuring departments, cutting out the overlaps, pushing for way more transparency in how money was handled.
Transparency seems key.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And setting up anti-corruption measures.
Yeah.
Real mechanisms. Moving away from, let's say, the old informal ways towards clear accountability.
Okay, so that's the structural stuff, the nuts and bolts. And the second prong, you mentioned a cultural shift. That sounds, well, less concrete, maybe.
It is, but it was seen as just as crucial, maybe more so for the long term.
How so?
The idea was, new rules are great, but for them to stick, the whole culture inside the institutions needed to change. So that's where his big push on synodality comes in.
Synodality, explain that a bit.
It's basically this idea of more dialogue, open doors, making the church more accessible, and critically giving lay people a real voice.
Even in finance?
Even in finance, yeah. In oversight, how resources are used. That whole 3-year global consultation, the big summits in 23 and 24, they were part of trying to build that more inclusive, more responsible culture.
Interesting. So it's not just about the money itself, but who gets a say in how it's managed and how the church itself works, really.
Exactly, at its core.
Now, this didn't happen instantly, did it? When did he start putting these pieces in place?
No, not at all. Pretty soon after he was elected in 2013, actually. He set up that C9 Council.
The Council of Cardinals, right?
Yeah, to advise him on the big picture reforms. And he also set up a specific commission with both lay and ordained experts, just to focus on the financial side.
Okay.
Then 2014 came two really key appointments. Cardinal George Pell.
Pell, yeah.
To run the new Secretariat for the Economy.
Yeah.
And Libero Maloney as the first ever Auditor General for the Vatican. Both brought in specifically for transparency.
And it sounds like transparency was badly needed, especially thinking about the Vatican Bank, the IOR.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you just have to look at the trial of its former president, Angelo Colloia, sentenced in 2021 for money laundering, embezzlement. It really showed the kind of deep-seated issues Francis was trying to root out. That bank was a critical place where change had to be seen.
But big changes always face resistance, don't they? The sources mention staunch resistance from the bureaucracy.
Yeah, that's really crucial to understand. It wasn't smooth sailing at all. There was serious opposition.
How bad did it get?
Well, one source describes a meeting in February 2015 where things just hit a screeching halt, basically infighting among cardinals who had totally different ideas about where these reforms should go.
So internal battles.
Absolutely. As one Vatican watcher, Andrea Gagliarducci, put it, even with this supposedly revolutionary pope, it was still the same old gang war. That shows you how entrenched some things were.
A real power struggle over the Vatican's finances. And then, as if that wasn't enough, you had scandals breaking out. That must have really hurt the reform efforts.
Yes, they were huge setbacks. Sidetracked things, drained energy. You had Cardinal Pell having to go back to Australia in 2017 for those abuse charges.
Right, though he was later acquitted.
He was. But the whole thing was a major distraction. And then there was the way Libero Maloney, the auditor, was ousted. Very sudden, kind of unceremonious, on espionage charges that were never actually proven.
And Maloney spoke out about that, didn't he?
He did. He pointed the finger directly at Cardinal Angelo Becciu.
Becciu? He was pretty high up then, right?
Very high up, yeah. Third-ranking official, basically. Maloney accused Becciu, and also the head of the Vatican police, of setting him up.
Why?
Well, Maloney claimed that He and Pell had found this big $400 million Vatican charitable fund investment in London real estate, and it wasn't transparent at all.
Ah, the London property deal. That became huge news, led to convictions, didn't it, Béchier himself?
Yes, exactly. In 2022, Béchier and 9 others were convicted of fraud, embezzlement related to that deal. He got over 5 years in prison.
And the money? Was it recovered?
A lot of it, no. A big chunk of that $400 million just vanished. And what's really quite something is, even though Béchier was stripped of his cardinal rights, reports say he was still involved in some preliminary meetings before the papal elections. Shows you the complexity of the politics.
So with all that turmoil, the scandals, Francis must have had to regroup, really push hard again, clarify who was actually in charge of the money.
Absolutely. After the London scandal blew up, you saw a really decisive change in strategy.
Like what?
He took a massive step.
Sure.
Stripped the Secretary of State, Béchier's old department, of its financial assets, just took them away.
That's major.
It was. And he brought in much stricter rules for how the Vatican buys goods and services. More process, more oversight.
And wasn't there a move to centralize things?
Yes, exactly. All the Vatican investments, managing the properties, that got centralized under APSA, the administration of the patrimony of the Apostolic See.
APSA, okay.
Plus, a new Auditor General, Alessandro Cassinis Reghini, came in.
Yeah.
Other trusted people were put in key spots. Leadership changes in important departments, even in Caritas Internationalis, the big charity network. It was a real shakeup.
Definitely sounds like it. And then that new constitution, Predicate Evangelium, in 2022. Where did that fit in?
That was basically putting a lot of these reforms into law, codifying them, giving them a solid legal foundation so they'd hopefully stick.
Right, making it official.
Yeah. And around the same time, you started seeing better reports from Moneyval, that's the European anti-money laundering watchdog, about the Vatican Bank. And both the bank, the IOR, and APSA started publishing annual reports, showing they were trying to meet international standards.
So on paper, it looks like real progress. But the sources also hint that maybe the job isn't finished, that implementation and the overall financial health are still iffy.
That's a really important point. Malone himself, the former auditor, has said something like, the new rules are there, but are they actually being fully followed everywhere? That's still the big question.
And the overall financial picture, still shaky.
Described as precarious, yeah.
Yeah.
COVID obviously didn't help. Museum income plummeted.
Although that bounced back in 2024, didn't it?
It did, thankfully. Visitor numbers, ticket sales back to pre-pandemic levels, nearly $100 million from tickets and souvenirs, 7 million visitors. So that's a positive sign.
But other income streams are struggling.
Seems so. Peter's Pence, the Pope's main collection fund donations have been down.
Why is that?
Partly secularization, fewer people donating in general. And remember, Peter's Pence doesn't just fund the Pope's charities. It pays for the Curia like 5,000 staff, costing nearly $900 million a year.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is. Plus, donations from places like the US and Germany have dropped off. Maybe disagreements over Francis's policies, some finding him too liberal, others too conservative.
Interesting dynamic.
Yeah. Peter's Pence did raise a bit over $50 million last year, up 11% after the pandemic slump. But even with money from dioceses in Germany and the US, it only covers about a quarter of the Holy See's budget.
Only a quarter, so there's a big gap.
A significant gap,
Yeah.
and the budget numbers show it. 2023 had a $94 million deficit, just about covered by APSA's investment gains. The combined accounts for 2024 showed an $83 million deficit. And the Employee Pension Fund. Big problems there. A $631 million shortfall. They've had to cut payments, even with Cardinal Farrell overseeing it.
So Francis was really trying to tighten belts, cutting cardinal stipends, pushing for zero deficit.
Yes, definitely trying to instill fiscal discipline. And one of his very last acts in February 2025 was setting up a commission specifically to find ways to boost Peter's Pence donations. Shows how urgent it still was.
So, faced with these ongoing issues, what are the proposed solutions? Do the experts agree?
Not entirely. You get different perspectives. Libero Maloney, the former auditor, really emphasizes bringing in outside help.
Lay experts.
Exactly. Financial professionals. His argument is the Vatican can't just rely on clergy anymore for complex global finance. They need people who really understand that world to manage things and raise funds effectively.
Okay, bring in the pros. What's the counter-argument?
Andrea Gagliarducci suggests maybe the focus should be different. He talks about needing to revalue the Vatican people, the ones with the old Curia mentality. His point is, it's hard for the Vatican to pay competitive salaries to attract top outside talent. So maybe it's better to incentivize and support the people already there, the ones with the institutional knowledge.
That's a real dilemma. Modern expertise versus internal experience and maybe loyalty?
It's a definite tension.
Okay, let's step back a bit. Can you give us a quick overview of the Vatican's whole economic setup? It's such a unique place.
It really is. You've got this tiny state, 110 acres, but it's funding the governance of a global church.
Right, and the money comes from?
The main sources we've mentioned, Peter's Pence, contributions from diocese worldwide tourism, those Vatican museums are huge. And then investment income, managed by APSA. That goes back to the Lateran Treaties in 1929, the financial settlement with Italy.
And APSA owns a lot of property, right?
Over 5,000 properties. But interestingly, only about 1 in 7 is rented out at full market rates. Shows that pure profit isn't always the main goal.
Okay, and where does the money go?
Spending. Biggest chunk is wages, pensions, running the Curia, that's maybe 60%. Then about a third goes on diplomacy, supporting churches globally, pastoral aid, and then charitable donations.
What about communication, media?
Yeah, the dicastery for communication costs around $40 million a year to run. It's a significant expense.
And the roles of the Vatican Bank, IOR, and APSA again, just to clarify.
Sure. The IOR isn't like your high street bank. It serves dioceses, religious orders, Vatican departments. It made a profit last year, $30.6 million on $5.4 billion in assets, and gave $13.6 million to the Pope's charities. And crucially, since 2022, all Vatican offices have to bank there. Centralizes things.
Got it. And APSA?
APSA is the treasury and the landlord, manages the investments in property. And now, after the London mess forced the Secretary of State to give up its investment power, APSA publishes annual statements. Much more transparent.
It really sounds like this structured, more open financial system is pretty new in the grand scheme of Vatican history.
Oh, absolutely. For most of the 20th century, things were very, very opaque.
Wasn't there that Banco Ambrosiano collapse in the 80s? Did that change things?
It caused a stir, but maybe limited long-term change initially. The bigger shifts came later. Pope Benedict XVI inviting Moneyval inspectors, bringing in the first anti-money laundering laws. Those are really decisive steps towards the system Francis inherited and tried to reform further.
And Moneyval's latest take?
Their 2024 report said, yes, there's a functioning anti-money laundering system now. But they also noted you need to see more results in court, more convictions for financial crime.
Right. Action, not just rules. So looking ahead, for the next pope, what's on the economic to-do list? The sources mention some options.
Yeah, it seems like internal papers lay out about 4 main paths they could take.
Okay, what are they?
1, get more commercial with the property portfolio. Charge market rents more often.
But the risk there?
You might squeeze out religious groups who can't afford it. Politically tricky.
Okay, option 2.
Shrink the payroll more.
Right.
Especially media administration.
Yeah.
Cut costs. You might reduce the church's cultural impact, its diplomatic reach.
Option 3.
Go hard on fundraising. Big philanthropic gifts, maybe through that new commission Francis set up.
Risk.
Big donors might want strings attached. Moral compromises, maybe.
And the last one.
Divest assets that aren't strategic. Sell things off to create a big endowment fund. Use the earnings from that to cover the budget gaps, especially for missionary work.
And the risk there, deciding what's non-strategic.
Exactly. And managing a huge endowment brings its own challenges. Each path has real political, pastoral downsides. It's going to be a very delicate balancing act for the next pope.
No easy answers, clearly. It's fascinating, though, when you think about it. All these complex financial issues, the deficits. Yet the Vatican's actual budget is tiny compared to, say, a big multinational company.
It really is modest, relatively speaking.
But its influence is massive, isn't it?
Outsize, definitely. And that's the key point. Influence isn't just about money.
It's the soft power.
Exactly. Moral authority, that global network. A papal appeal can mobilize huge amounts of charity, completely outside the Vatican's own books. They can weigh in on global debates, debt, climate change, with a weight far beyond their budget size.
So summing up then, Pope Francis really pushed hard on financial reform, transparency, accountability, driven by the idea that this stuff matters for credibility, for the mission.
He definitely put structures in place, made real changes. But as we've seen, the underlying financial pressures are still very real. Yeah. And implementation is key.
And the next pope inherits both the reforms and the remaining challenges. Big decisions ahead.
Absolutely. About the whole economic future, really.
Hopefully this deep dive has helped you, the listener, get a clearer picture of this really complex area, trying to understand the financial reality behind this global institution.
Yeah, it's a story of reform, resistance, and ongoing financial pressures.
And it leaves you with a thought, maybe. If the Vatican's finances are relatively small, but its influence is so big, what does that really tell us about where power comes from? Is it just money? Or is moral authority still a major force? And looking forward, what happens if those financial constraints really start to beat? If they have to pull back on the charity, the diplomacy, what are the long-term implications of that? Something to think about.
Thanks for hanging out with us on Celebrities, the Gist HQ. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and come back for more juicy stories. Until next time, keep living the Gist life.